Welcome to the Therapeutic Food Solutions podcast. I'm your host, Marian Mitchell. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach, therapeutic diet expert, and founder of The Road to Living Whole. There are many different diets out there. It's hard to know which one is right for you with your chronic illness and autoimmune disease. In this podcast, I'm going to share with you the foundational pieces every single therapeutic diet out there shares, and also how to use the best one for your particular diagnosis. If you've been looking for a meal planning partner, help navigating the complicated healthcare system, and want to feel better quickly, I'm your girl. Grab your kombucha and notebook. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I have Mark Durante. I think it's how you say your last name.
Yes, yep, no,
Yeah.
You nailed it.
I have Mark Durante back, and in our last episode, he gave us just kind of an overview of different therapies that are out there to help with chronic illness. And today we're going to hone in on one specific genre, or I don't know,
I think
grouping.
that's a good way to, yeah, exactly. It's a segment of the longevity space for sure.
Yes, and it's peptides. They are up and coming. I'm starting to see advertisements for them. I'm starting to see a little bit of education, but I'm assuming on social media it's going to be very short. It's going to be hyped up, and I want to give you clarity and direction on where to go if you're considering peptides, and Mark is the person to educate us on this. So Mark, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back, honestly. So I mean, it was a good time last time because we were really, like you said, we were kind of doing a cycle through all kinds of things, whether we were talking about PRP or advancements there, where it was more platelet-rich fibrin that's giving a little bit more scaffolding type, support, to exosomes, which are playing a very key role, particularly in aesthetics and regenerative medicine. And then I think we walked into some acellular stem cells, where we're really
Yep.
trying to get down into what practitioners are doing now in order to fight off a lot of these chronic-based illnesses. And I think it's important to share in a lot of this spaces. This is new and upcoming. So everything that we're talking about here is designed for education. It's not something that we're going to try and make any claims to it. So I think it's very important that we also address the fact that particularly when we talk about peptides, it's important that they go to the practitioner, because when it comes to dosing, that is critical, and only your practitioner is going to truly understand how to do that. But I think that's with all biologics,
Yeah.
so this is kind of a fun topic because peptides are the truly up and coming. And I think at the same time, though they're understood, they're also misunderstood. So I think you and I are going to jump into what that looks like and where some of those misunderstandings can be, because it got so popular so quick.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to hear you have something called Peptide University, and I've looked it
Correct.
over. I have not had the time to dive into it, but it is on my list.
Yes.
And so, you are truly an amazing resource. And one of the things that I want to talk about initially is that peptides are actually very well researched, and they have been
Yeah.
since what, like the 40s or the 50s? It's been like a
It
really
it's been around for a long time, and some of those peptides have actually been FDA approved. So I mean, we do, as much as sometimes we feel like we fight against pharmaceutical, at the same time, it's been a good thing because they've had the money to put behind these and really do a great subset of studies. But then I think the other part to express as well is when you're in this regenerative space and things are kind of working their way through FDA approval, sometimes the practitioners are doing some of their own studies in order to validate the efficacy of these things. So there's a lot of application that's being had. I think we also have a lot of consumers that have been on them now long enough in order to kind of give their feedback into the realm of it at the same time. So it's a good space.
That's awesome. So let's first of all introduce yourself and a little bit of your story in case people haven't listened to our last episode yet.
Yes. Okay. And I'll try and make this one quick because my story could take up an entire episode. So, my name is Mark Durante, and I'm the founder of Rise Up Medical, which was really established out of my own health crisis. So, what a lot of people don't realize is that at the age of 35, I was getting neuropathy for no reason. Maybe 5 years into that journey, we found out that the contributing cause was that I was suffering from heart failure and didn't know it, because honestly, when you're in your mid to late 30s, you're just thinking, okay, these are the signs of aging, and didn't realize that there was something more serious going on. So, at that point, I wound up living a bit of a lifestyle, just being medicated to try and work through the heart, issues. But ultimately, it led me to a heart transplant. And it came from an unknown cause, which later, and this is something that I would be a proponent for, is I wound up doing my own DNA testing to find out that I actually had a gene that was expressing abnormally that became the main contributor. But at the time of the transplant, nobody could figure anything out. They were like, the heart is healthy, the muscle tissue is healthy, digestive is healthy. However, we see where it failed, but we just can't explain why. So after that time frame, I wound up walking, you know, I would say, you're jumping back into work, you're having a great time, but the neuropathy, instead of getting better, which we thought it would, and the reason why I say that is that most would have contributed to the fact that the heart wasn't pumping the proper blood flow to extremities. So when the blood retracts, so do the nerves. And so the nerves start to die, and then you start getting this abnormal activity and nerve function that most people will call neuropathy. And it got so bad for me that I nearly became disabled by it. So, I mean, when we talk about this, I had been doing every type of drug that the practitioners could come up with, and I would get through a part of having some, pain reduction, but ultimately it was so bad that I was doing 675 milligrams of Lyrica, taking tramadol, taking hydrocodone, all this just to try and supplement to survive. And when you're in the medical space, the biggest thing I worried about is, hey, I'm there working with practitioners, educating them on new emerging technologies, and I was afraid of my own mental capacity. And a lot of people don't realize too, pain changes your mental capacities. So
Oh, yeah.
in doing so, you're fighting against the pain. You're trying to maintain a lifestyle, but you're also trying to maintain higher level conversations. So at that point, I just wound up having a conversation with an orthopedic that I was working very closely with, a great friend of mine. It and it He had been doing stem cells for 20 years, doing it through bone marrow aspirate, which is where they just take it out of your hip, they spin it down, and they reintroduce those stem cells back into the body. And I wound up getting some good benefit from it. But at the end of the day, about halfway through, I was hitting a plateau. So it was at that point that I saw the benefit that these biologics were having and realized that I had grown beyond my own body's ability to repair, because we know that as we age, everything starts to become dysfunctional, everything starts acting more poorly. And in all truthfulness to the practitioner that was treating me, he's like, Mark, after all the trauma you've been through, your stem cells are garbage. But he says there's still the wisdom of your body. So I want to use that to try and see if it can't create some level of regeneration. And so it was that point where I got connected with a company who was working with a heart transplant cardiologist out of Cedars-Sinai, who had a longevity and regenerative clinic along with his heart clinic. And he was doing some really incredible things through an independent review board type study. We were studying about 5,000 different patients, and neurological disorders was one of them. So I wound up getting involved in that product and used that to fully get, and when I say restoration, enough restoration that I did not have to take any medication anymore. And as a matter of fact, to give the success story on that one, I'm 3 years without taking any medications.
That's
So
amazing.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
also want to be very honest to the listeners on this as well, is that I still have some remnants of that neuropathy, but I think the key is I could have probably taken care of it, but other parts of your body start showing up with more pain. So you just you start prioritizing body parts. Because, I mean, honestly, at that point, I was in my late 40s, when you're suddenly going through this, and I'm about to be 53, coming up here in a little bit, but it is, things just start to, break down. And so at this point, it's all about body optimization. And I can tell you from doing all this type of work, I feel better than I did in my 30s. So there is truth in kind of the anti-aging, or I don't want to call it, we don't really like the word anti-aging. We look at it as age management, but at the end of the day is, how do we stall time or reverse time? And that's what we're ultimately doing, is trying to bring those organs and your total body function back to the way it was when you were youthful. And I will tell you, I feel like my body is more optimized today than it was back then. And that is a gratefulness. I always say, give thanks to God and give thanks to biologics, because both of those things play into a major role in terms of, helping to, well, like I said, for myself, it was a reversal, not a complete cure at this point, because I just have to give it more attention, but I have restored knees, I have restored shoulders, I have restored low back. I mean, those are areas that I can say I had full restoration to. And frankly, Marian, you'd appreciate this as well, because I went and did a an MRI of my
Mhm.
back just to kind of, because I was looking at different areas to see whether or not I was having muscle related pain or I was having structural pain. And when
Mhm.
they came back, they were like, well, Mark, it's interesting because we treated your cervical and we treated your lumbar, and those both areas look better than your thoracic, which is a mess right now. So, you know what? It just healing never stops. So it is, but it was a great testimony to realize that the biologics were working on my behalf. So that kind of created what we call now a passion project, which is Rise Up Medical, and that's the short, long story of how we got here. And then now it's really about how to educate, give guidance. And when I say guidance, not medical advice, but guidance too, because we educate and work with practitioners all day long so that they can better serve the community and start offering up these solutions that don't have to be pharmacology related and don't have to be surgically related. But I
Mhm.
think you and I talked about this at the same time. I can't live without certain pharmaceuticals, so I'm grateful. This is not a talk against the pharmaceutical industry, but I'm not against surgery either because surgery saved my life and helped me in a lot of other areas. But what we talk about is, could we start working from a prevention model that stops us or doesn't lead us into those applications? Can
Right.
they become that first line defense that we utilize in order to live a longer functional life? Because as it's been said, if you can live the next 5 years, you could see the first person live to 125 just because of the medical advancements. So a lot of this thing, a lot of part that we're playing in biologics is, can we get to the next 5 years without having any issues when that new discovery comes out and shows us how to live functional for the rest of our lives? And it'll still play a part in biologics. Biologics don't go away in this. Biologics just get advanced. I think we're unraveling the science around biologics so that we understand how to use them better. And now it's taking us down pathways. Ah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
They're beautiful.
And it's really, really exciting. So let's dive into peptides as
Yes.
our topic of the day, our
Yes. Yes.
biologic of
Yes.
the day. I get very concerned when something becomes popular overnight, because then there's the potential for a lot of misinformation,
Hmm.
misunderstandings, and also a lot of reduced quality products out there.
Yes. Yes.
So let's dive into peptides. What are they? Where do they come
Yes.
from? And then we can talk about their applications, specifically for chronic illness.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, peptides are already naturally found in your body. So a lot of what we're doing today in today's peptides is we're creating a synthetic version that mimics the peptide that's in there. To keep it less complex, it's when you look at a protein, there's a lot of amino acids that can be used in order to build that protein. Peptides are considered short chains of amino acids. Their design is really to play a single directive to a cell. The reason why I bring this up is because a lot of people in this industry are always going, okay, Mark, well, can I replace doing my exosome or acellular stem cell therapy with peptides? Because my best friend down the street says he's totally cured. And you're kind of sitting down there and going, no, that might have been just a freak accident. I said, the reality is peptides play a key role in everything we're doing, but it's more of a single signal, where exosomes and acellular stem cells are playing thousands of signals all at the same
Mhm.
time. Now, if you know what your issue is, like we've seen popular ones out there for weight loss, like the GLPs. Everybody knows about Ozempic and tirzepatide, and now they're coming out. They're studying retatrutide. These are basically single messages that are being sent to the body to basically tell it to do something that you want to see present a biologically favorable outcome. I guess is the best way to put it. You want to lose weight? Well, how do we lose weight? One, in some of those peptides, it's like, hey, we're slowing the emptying of your stomach. We're changing the way your brain thinks about food. We're changing, how your body is processing, sugar in your bloodstream and insulin and the role that it's playing. We're playing in what we call thermogenesis, or, where your body is literally breaking these fats down into simple sugars and then using them. So all those are playing into these different peptides. Now, when you hear something called like a GLP-1, a GLP-2, a GLP-3, they're talking about the amount of receptors or signals that are being done there. So in a GLP-1, there's traditionally one receptor that's being targeted. That receptor is basically you're sending a message through that receptor and the body's responsive. When you're doing the GLP-3, you're hitting three different receptors. So you're hitting three different signals. And so that's how we're starting to see a lot of this good, weight loss that's occurring. But the other part of it too, when you look at peptides, and it's something that I've really been kind of talking to people lately about, is I want really people to be thinking about this in, you know, elements of three. Because what we've seen about the GLPs is that a lot of patients are seeing great weight loss, but they're having a negative effect in the fact that they're losing muscle mass. And so,
Hmm.
in losing that muscle mass, they don't realize that the amount of muscle you carry on your bone creates a direct relationship in terms of how strong your bones are. So, the more weight you carry on them, the stronger they are. Well, if you're losing weight, but a lot of that's coming through muscle loss, you're actually doing yourself an injustice because muscle burns fat and those things more
Yeah.
efficiently. But the other thing too is that you're not stressing your bones so that now all of a sudden you're getting a situation where you have more or less dense bone mass.
So I have a question about that because I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about GLP-1s and or
Yeah,
GLPs in general, because they
yeah,
are expanding, which I think is very
they are.
interesting.
Yes.
That we're
Yeah,
not going to
yeah.
be doing GLP-1s anymore. They're going to be GLPs because they're going to be
Yep.
hitting multiple things.
Correct.
Is I think there's blindness, there's frozen stomach, like there's like all these negative side effects, but it comes from the fact that the doses are too high. They start
That's
too
exactly
high.
right.
And it's really more of the weight loss clinics, not the
Mhm.
physician-led weight
Correct.
loss themselves that tend to start much more moderate, because
Correct.
like the starting dose is like 10 milligrams or something, I think, of
Correct.
Ozempic.
Yep.
And really, the starting dose should be 1.25, maybe 2.5, depending on
Correct.
diabetic, if you're pre-diabetic, type 2 diabetic, whatever. Um, so, like, I feel like, people are looking for a quick fix and they're not changing their diet. They're not
Hmm.
eating healthy when they do eat.
Correct.
They're also on such a high dose that food is repulsive. So they're just not
Yes.
hungry. So the only thing they crave are burgers and fries because those are like happy food.
Correct.
And so, like, that's kind of one of the things that, like, when they first came out, I kind of balked against them.
Hmm.
As more research has come out, people are, microdosing, low dosing,
Correct.
things like that. All
Correct.
of a sudden, we're seeing, okay, blood sugar's getting stable. Okay, food, they love food, but they can say no when they get full, which is
Correct.
huge for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who've
Oh yeah.
never felt full in their brain. They just get distended in their stomach and physically ill from food, but they never have that I'm hungry, I'm full signal.
Correct.
And so the GLPs, and we've also seen that GLPs lower histamine in the body. So we see a
Hmm.
reversal of MCAS and, histamine related disorders that way. So really, it's the dose. And most people,
Hmm.
if you're losing more than 2 pounds, 2 to 3 pounds a week, you're on too high of a dose.
That's exactly right. That's exactly. This should be treated like a traditional weight loss program that your doctor would guide you on. And you're correct. That's why you started seeing what they called Ozempic face.
Hmm.
They're losing so rapidly that their body can't make any adjustments to it. And here's the thing. You lose all that. It doesn't look attractive. And then on top of because here you look attractive because now you're taking shape. But now all of a sudden, what's not taking shape is your skin. And so it's leaving people with a lot of issues where they look morbid. And so,
Hmm.
and we're doing a lot of things even in the aesthetic space to try and counter that. And one of the things that we want to try to do to counter that is to first say you've got to go back to the 2 pounds a week,
Hmm.
type of scenario. It is follow that type because we're impatient. But what happens when you try and press it, all the negative side effects happen. And of course, the other
Yeah.
challenge that we see is everybody believes the scale. And the scale is just a measurement of weight. It's not a measurement of what's actually happening in the body. What is it that you're losing? Because
Yeah.
I watch too many, particularly females, will go back and if they do any type of body scans, they're finding out that they're losing more muscle than they are fat.
Hmm.
And that gets dangerous. And so we don't
Yeah.
want that, especially when you're dealing with bone density related elements. And so we're not doing females a justice any justice by creating that type of scenario where they're losing too quickly. And we want to try and modify that because here's the thing, all the studies were done over like 40, 48, 48 months or something of that nature to where you're doing this for a long period of time and then you're seeing those type of outcomes. I think this needs to be, if you're using these, you're looking this for a lifestyle change. The same way you would turn around and say, hey, I'm going to start eating cleaner. It's a lifestyle change. I'm going to start working out. It's a lifestyle change. This just becomes another supportive tool that I think actually breaks barriers,
I
because a
would
lot,
agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I've seen, so for example, someone in my world who she's been trying to lose weight for 15 years and she would lose
Hmm.
5 or 10 pounds and then gain it back, dealing with lots of inflammation, lots of pain, doing everything she can to manage her blood sugar and all of that. And she started at 2.5. She was losing like a third of a pound a week, but she saw inflammation go down. She saw nutrient
Hmm.
absorption went up because I think the slower the emptying, she was able to actually absorb the food coming
Correct.
in.
That's correct.
And she wasn't, the appetite suppressant was kind of there, kind of not. When she jumped up to 5, all of a sudden she felt full. She could say
Hmm.
no to things. She's losing body fat and not muscle. She's actually hasn't lost any muscle because she's been training with a personal trainer for like 3 years
Hmm.
and wasn't losing weight, but gaining muscle. So she's actually she's losing fat. And
Yep.
she's, that the immune system regulation that's happening for her is super cool. But she's also on LDN and a few other things. But she'd been on that for a while and hadn't really seen much movement. And all of a sudden, adding the proper dose, which is still half of what
Hmm.
is recommended from like weight loss clinics and stuff. And she's just seen amazing, amazing results. I think that, this is where I'm like, okay, peptides are really cool when they're done appropriately. And the goal
Correct. Correct.
should be health. And,
Yep.
if you're, from a weight loss, I just want to talk about weight loss for a second. As a health
Yeah.
coach, no medication can outdo your diet or your lifestyle.
Hmm.
You have
Correct.
to be eating well. You have to be moving your body and strength training, whatever that looks like. Put on some weights and go for a hike if you're not a gym person. Put on a weighted vest and go for a walk. I don't care. I like strength training. It makes me feel powerful. It's kind of my
Hmm.
antidepressant, but it's like you have to be moving your body. You have to be sleeping. You have to have connections. This is just an added tool that
That's right.
can really help, but it's not the end all be all. And none of these peptides are because there's a host of them. We have the GLP-1s. The other one I want to talk about that I know of its use for, but again, I'm not anywhere close to being an expert, is BP157, which I've heard
Oh, yeah.
is really good for the intestinal lining and healing leaky gut.
Yes.
So I want to keep diving into more peptides because there's so much
Yes.
out there and it's really overwhelming for the layperson.
Yeah, and I think too, when you start talking about gut health, there's a lot of people that are coming up with oral peptides. And we work with oral peptides. But what a lot of people don't realize is when you have this short chain that's kind of weak structure, they can very easily be destroyed in the gut. And so what happens, a lot of people take the oral thinking that it's going to benefit their body when really what it's doing is helping to affect their gut health. So a lot of times too, when we're talking about these and we see practitioners really starting to preach this is going, hey, if you're trying to do for overall body health, then you really want to do more of a sub-Q injection. When you're looking to restore gut health, you want to do it more from an oral perspective. So you see a lot of people, like you said, different autoimmune diseases where the gut is really being deteriorated. You see ulcerations, you see different stomach related issues. BPC 157 in an oral, I've seen do amazing things. And I've seen it done even through my own family. We've had people that I'll just say this, I know of friends of mine who have suffered after doing the GLPs where they feel like they're getting a lot of acid indigestion or there's a lot of things that are starting to come up because when you do GLPs, you come into a real discovery about where your gut health is.
Yeah,
I'm just going to be honest with
I
you. You're
could
going to
see
find
that.
out what
I
foods
can see that.
you have
Yeah.
sensitivities to because when you slow the gastric emptying, all of a sudden you start to come to realize, oh, maybe that was something because it went quickly. I was able to fight through it without knowing that I had any issue. But when you start doing a GLP and it starts going more slowly and you're sitting there with an upset stomach, you start to learn the difference between healthy fats and bad fats. You start discovering, hey, did I have other issues in my stomach or my intestines that maybe I wasn't aware of? So I think it's a good revelation to be on GLPs at the same time because it will reveal. The other part too that I want to bring up in this as well is that they're starting to find out that the GLPs are actually helping with addictive personality type disorders.
I have heard that, and
Yeah.
I find that super interesting. A lot of people who start GLP-1s or GLPs for weight
Hmm.
loss end
Correct.
up being not drinking.
That is the number one that I see because a lot of it too, especially wine. the amount of sugar content that's in there, it literally stops them from craving that sugar. And their body is processing that sugar more readily. So their body is, it's almost like going through a detox, right? So it's like
Hmm.
your body is starting to come back to the way it should function. And as a result, you're not having those same signals any longer. And so it is, but the drinking side is one, but it's even gone beyond drinking. It just really, I think that's a cool thing. And I think one of the pharmaceutical companies is actually taking a look at that. And that could be later down the road, another FDA approval is
Well,
some of these.
and it's like, I'm not against the FDA approval. They approve a lot of bad things, but they approve a lot of good things, right? And I think
Correct,
that the current
correct.
administration is launching it in a much better direction than it has been.
Yeah,
What I think is really cool about that addiction is so much more than just the drug itself, right? It's brain
correct,
chemistry, but
correct.
also it's a lot of it's just coping skills
Hmm.
and being
Oh,
willing
yeah.
to face the ugly in your life and to feel things and but it also long-term drug use changes your brain and I feel like if it can help
Hmm.
restore that along with, maybe cognitive behavioral therapy and EMDR, things like that,
Yep.
other modalities of healing and that the side effects are so minimal when dosed appropriately
Hmm.
compared to other pharmaceuticals. I'm really excited for the future of biologics for that reason.
Absolutely.
And if we can help turn off the desire for that,
Hmm. Correct.
um, physiologically, not emotionally, but
Yes.
physiologically, that gives people an edge who want to emotionally, but maybe have had some damage done, fix that.
Hmm.
So it's so
Oh, yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, I know, I know. And I didn't mean to take us back off a topic off of the BPC because I mean that's a
No, that's
huge one, but
okay.
as you start really
Well,
kind of
there's so
working in the
many.
gut, oh, there
Yeah.
is. There is. And and the BPC, which stands for body protective compound, I mean, it's probably if you were to go look up some of the best longevity type peptides, no matter what you're dealing with, somehow BPC 157 keeps making it in the mix. And it's a very restorative type peptide. I mean, it's playing a lot in terms of just revascularization to the area, reducing inflammation, helping in the overall repair side. You see a lot of people that are, very active in their exercise programs. They love BPC. What from a competitive standpoint, or whether you're non-competitive, it just has a way of rebalancing the body and helping in overall recovery. And the other one too that most people don't even think about is its brother or sister, TB500, which
Okay.
TB500 is another peptide that will signal to try and help with cellular division and cellular migration. So,
Okay.
one is creating more cellular division so that you get a more rapid healing. But at the same time, if you see how wound healing actually takes place, the body's trying to create this scaffolding to allow these little workers to run back and forth in order to continue to create repair. So when you're doing something like a TB500, that it plays really well with its sister BPC 157.
So I have seen the BPC 157. I've seen some people who've gone through some major surgeries, in the
Hmm.
holistic realm, be talking about how that was part of it. So the TB 500 would be perfect for the mix for recovering from surgery and things like that.
Correct, correct. Well, there's another one too that I think helps on the surgical side, and it's playing a part in aesthetics. At the same time, it's a GHK-Cu, which in short is a copper peptide. And copper peptide plays a big role in terms of stem cell migration, the rebuilding of collagen and elastin. So when you're looking at the overall wound healing experience, that becomes another one. And now they've created compounds which they call glow, which is the three of them together. And so when you're talking to different doctors, surgeons, they are finding some value in these type of peptides to play in the overall healing because people love the natural. They love the natural, they love the speed. And then I'm going to throw one more out there just on the kind of the surgical or kind of wound healing side, which is, or in the aesthetics, is KPV. So KPV basically helps to regulate the immune system so that it's not in hyper mode all the time. So it plays a big role in helping. It works really good with BPC 157 in terms of reducing inflammation. But
All
that one
I'm
is very
hearing
immune
is
related.
autoimmune disease, like
Yes.
that
Yes.
whole thing, because the body is so burdened and there's so much
Correct.
damage happening that this glow compound of
Correct.
peptides would be fantastic for those who
Yes.
are, especially in a flare,
Oh, yeah.
maybe even an MS flare where there's like a lot of. damage happening that way. And I know
Oh
that
yeah,
that's not nerve specific, but the body works as a whole. It's not in isolation. And if
correct,
we're healing the gut and we're modulating the immune system and bringing it down so that it's able to do its job effectively,
correct,
then
correct.
we're gonna it's kind of that healing domino effect.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, and you know what? When you talk, because you like autoimmune,
Hmm.
it is, I'll just throw a couple out there that are really playing a big role in the autoimmune side, which is thymosin alpha 1. So that one is playing a key role in terms of the overall immune system and support, just in terms of like T cell activity, a lot of different, you have, people don't realize the complexity of the immune system. And so when it gets out of balance, it's kind of like which one is causing the out of balance. The thymulin is another one that is playing a role on natural killer cell, development, because you have a little gland that sits behind your ribs and in front of your heart called the thymus gland, and it is responsible for the creation of these natural killer cells. Now, why that's so important, and there's a lot of research being done around these natural killer cells because they're playing a role of going around the body and seeking out abnormal cell activity, like cancer activity, like virally loaded cells, like senescent cells. And to give a little description, senescent cells, what happens is when a cell goes through its natural death cycle, sometimes it doesn't complete that cycle and it runs around in what we call senescent cell. Now,
Is that like the
there
zombie cells that
it is called
sometimes
the
people
zombie
talk
cells.
about?
That's
Okay.
exactly right. Now, here's the part too that I always want to express. People think that all senescent cells are bad. Actually, there is a period of time after the cell's going through its cycle that senescents actually kick off a great, they actually create advantages. But it's when they hang around for too long. It's kind of like that person at the party who you loved. It was great, but now you're tired and you want to go to bed and they just won't leave the house. Everybody has met one of those people.
Yep.
That's when they convert to zombie cells. At that point, you just invite them to stay the night, and I'll see you in the morning.
Got it.
But that's a key one. But the other part too, you talked about neurological diseases. What's been interesting is the studies that are happening around neurodegenerative diseases and how natural killer cells and natural killer cell exosomes are playing a role in that. So new science is going
Cool.
to show that your immune system is playing a huge responsibility on a lot of different categories. And, you know, I mean, you can see how this kind of gets to be spun out because then you start getting into mitochondrial dysfunction. And everybody's familiar with NAD because
Hmm.
if you're in the health field in some fashion, you've probably done NAD, whether it's been sub-Q or done it in an IV fashion.
Hmm.
But what a lot of people don't understand is NAD is a fuel system. But NAD, to optimize itself, you have to work on different aspects of the mitochondria. So there's different peptides like SS31 and MOTC that are playing a role on the mitochondrial function itself that make NAD work that much better. So I always say, hey, look, if you got a broken down manufacturing plant and you're trying to fuel it, but it can only take on about 50% of the energy to create production, it doesn't matter how much NAD you throw into the system, it's just not going to produce more. But in that 50%, it will produce better, right?
Hmm.
But if you can physically work on rebuilding the manufacturing facility so that it functions at 100%, you will more optimize that fuel that's being sent in through NAD to create a much better, to play a much better role.
So the peptides give you more bang for your buck, is what I'm
They do.
hearing.
They do.
Because,
I think it's surgical.
hmm,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, I can see that for sure. And I
Yeah.
definitely see the role in acute disease, but
Yes.
also that low level chronic disease of giving that edge. Again, these are not a replacement for diet and lifestyle or anything like
Correct.
that, but they're the ones that, okay, like there's about 20 to 30% that diet and lifestyle only get them so far,
Hmm.
right? And that's when we need the other things. And this is where I believe, from what I'm learning, that peptides can be that push. And again, as you
Hmm.
know, now one therapy is it, but this is a big one that can really, really help. I understand exosomes. We'll talk about those later in a
Yes.
different episode, on the role that they play. But I can really see, for one, I can see why all of a sudden they're kind of expanding. They're not GLP-1s, they're calling them GLPs because, we have to attack all these different mechanisms. And then my
Hmm.
question is like, okay, if peptides are natural, and I don't know if you can answer this, I'm guessing you can. How come our body stops producing them? Or, are there things that we can do to help reinvigorate the system to produce them themselves? Does supplementation help kind of stimulate, tickle the brain so that it starts doing that? So I have kind of questions because again, I'm really big on like, these are great, they're expensive. So it's
Hmm.
like, if we're going to do them, we want to spend our money well,
Correct.
which is where the education piece is huge. But also, since they are naturally occurring in the body, where does the breakdown begin to occur?
After 18 to
Okay.
21. Yes. So, I mean, the body was designed to grow and then die, and so what happens is by the time we hit around the age of 40, we've lost maybe about 50% of what we had in order to get us to the point where we had had our optimal growth phase, right?
Okay.
It is. So at that point, you're just starting decline. I think that's why the younger generation now is doing it the best because they're not waiting to age. They're literally trying to say, I'm going to fight it all the way because it's just kind of like trying to keep your fuel tank filled to the top. You're like, you drive a little bit, but you don't want to get caught out in the country where there's no gas station. So you just keep, hey, there's going to be another 50 miles to the next gas station. So you want to fill your tank up a little bit and just keep things optimized so that you don't have any challenges. And that's kind of what we're doing with peptides and we're doing with exosomes. We're doing with PRP. We're literally giving back to the body the resources that it's naturally losing. And
Okay.
I had a longevity practitioner when I was at a longevity conference. Literally stood in front of all these doctors and said, "Look, at the end of the day, when you go to zero stem cells, you're dead." I mean, he put it that simple. And so what happens is, how do we stop the process of going to zero stem cells? Or how do we go to stop going to zero peptides being created or zero, you name it, you name it.
Right.
So,
Right.
and that's one of the reasons why I mentioned before, peptides are surgical in nature, meaning you're trying to use a surgical precision to try and figure out what you feel that there is a loss and then go attack that one receptor. Remember, there's thousands. So that's why I
Right.
say it's more surgical than a kind of, when you start
Yeah.
getting into the exosomes and acellular, now you're literally taking more of a shotgun approach to where you're going, hey, I'm putting it all out there, and we're going to see. I mean, we kind of know what works, but we're going to see what works extra.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is like, let's say you're in an acute autoimmune disease flare, probably helping the mitochondria and modulating the immune system and healing the gut. That,
Correct.
that's where the surgical precision could be very helpful.
That's correct.
After you've, done the diet and lifestyle side of things, and then we're still there, and maybe even acutely there, that
Yeah,
could really be a huge game changer for surgical precision in.
absolutely.
Okay. What else are we seeing in the realm of peptides?
Brain health. As a matter of fact, what's
Ooh.
crazy is nobody really talks about it, but it's one that I get. Like, if you even start a conversation around brain, people are like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what did you just say?" And they kind of quickly try and pull you in. Hey, can I talk to you about this? It is because
Well,
they're like
dementia is
anything
becoming
else.
what? It's one in three, 1 in 2, something like
Correct.
that. Like it's.
Correct. What was interesting is they threw out a statistic to show that in the UK, the number one leading cause of death now over heart disease is Alzheimer's. So a lot of people now are really trying to go, okay, this thing, Alzheimer's and dementia, it's a real thing. And if you've ever had a family member that you've had to deal with that has Alzheimer's and dementia, it is one of the most painful experiences. And it's not their fault. There's nothing they can do about it. But it's like, how would you like to be forgotten by a family member who you absolutely love and adore? I remember even with my grandmother when she was getting dementia, she used to think that I was my dad. And when I would try to tell her that, no, hey, it's Mark, she would get so confused and it would actually start to get her upset that I used to just play my dad.
Yeah.
And so these things are real. So it is in doing so, everybody wants to start taking care of their cognition. And I think that's one of those areas that I'm going to say this. It's a big part that everybody wants to talk about that very few people discuss. But when you take that in conjunction with mitochondrial dysfunction, those two play a significant role with one another. And that's one of the reasons they're saying now is mitochondrial dysfunction is actually leading to greater causes of inflammation that are leading to diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia. And if we get ahead of this, then we can live a more functional life. Because,
Yeah.
one of the things too, when you talk to people, if I ask somebody today who's not healthy and they're in their 60s, how would you like to live to 125? You get in a resounding Hell no. It is, they're like, man, I'm ready now. But if you talk to somebody in their 80s who's functional, mentally clear and active, they want to go as long as they can. It is,
Yeah.
and I think that's the goal that we're trying to do. And the role that peptides will play in this is how do we stay functionally well to the day we die? I always say, I want to be taken out like God had to take out Jack Jacob. It's like he had to take out his hip to say, okay, enough's enough. You're coming. it,
Yeah, my goal is to live as long as possible, as well as possible.
correct, correct.
I want to be able to see my kids, my grandkids. My grandma is 89. She's getting ready to have her second great great this year.
Oh, that's
And,
awesome.
so she's like, that's five generations,
Correct.
and she has taken, I mean, she was climbing the stairs. She lived in a two-story house with a basement, and the laundry was in the basement, and her bedroom was upstairs. So she was taking
Yep.
stairs up into her 70s, and she was doing yoga up until her I think late 60s, early 70s. My grandfather
Yes.
actually had Parkinson's. It was military related.
Yep.
Um, and, for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, he was dying soon. And he
Oh,
just
yeah.
kept hanging on.
Absolutely.
There were times that he would call me, and I have the same name as my grandma. And so I would be playing my grandma on the phones so that he wouldn't get agitated. And,
Yes.
and there were times he would come to family dinners or family reunions, and he didn't know anybody, but he played along, you
He
know.
did. Yep, exactly.
My grandma, she's 89. She has her wits about her. She tries very hard to take good care of herself, and it really does show. And her kids all love her. I mean, she moved here because of the weather and the altitude, and
Yes.
everybody's flying in. She has kids with her all the time. She has six kids, and so I'm like, I don't want to die off. I want to wear out, and I don't want to
That's
be a
it.
burden. I want to be enjoying life for as long as possible. And, there's accidents, there's things that happen, but for the time on this earth, I want it be as vibrant and functional and pain-free as
Oh,
possible.
yeah.
And, it breaks my heart when I see people who they're completely fine with dying off.
Correct. Correct.
And that's fine for those people who want to do that. I'm not judging, but there's a lot of people who don't,
Oh, yeah.
you
Well,
know.
it's you bring up a good point is I'm trying to finish writing a book about my experience from the kind of heart transplant to regenerative journey. And when we were sitting down talking about this, and this is kind of the spirit of what you're talking about, when I was going through the heart transplant days, I had a saying that I had created in my head that I really lived by, and that was warriors don't die, they're taken. And so in that sense, that's how I want this to happen. I want to be taken, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And I think that's what all this regenerative health is doing, is getting us to a point where we're being forced to be taken out rather than dying, because nobody enjoys death. We would rather fall
Yeah.
asleep and then never wake back up.
Yeah.
Which is the ultimate goal. My time and
Absolutely.
purpose have been done.
Yeah, absolutely the ultimate goal. And what I love about peptides, I think that surgical precision is absolutely necessary, especially when it
Absolutely.
comes to acute disease and recovery from, major trauma, whatever
Absolutely.
that looks like. And what I think blew my mind when I first really learned about them is that they have been studied and been around for, I mean, the 40s or the 50s. I mean, we're going on like 80 years,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and they're just kind of now becoming popular, which is just so crazy to me. But also learning, I believe that they give peptides to like burn victims,
Oh, they
and they
do.
have for
Yep.
years.
Yep.
And insulin is a peptide.
Yes. Yep.
I had no idea. I just,
Oh, yeah.
insulin's what gets blood sugar out of the blood. It gets
Right.
sugar
Right. Right.
consumed, it gets it out of the blood and, away from damaging the cells. I didn't know that that was a peptide, right? And so it's like people are like, oh, they're so new, da, da, but they're been around, they're used, they're standard. And now
hmm
they're just coming to the forefront of medicine because the pharmaceutical model, there's almost more damage than there is good. So we have to find other ways to heal.
Correct. Correct. And we want the natural way. The body
Yeah.
has an incredible restorative nature to it. It just lacks the resources. I mean, it would be like trying to say build a house, but all I'm doing is dropping off wood and some drywall. You go, well, I couldn't keep a roof over this. I couldn't put, I would never want to live here,
Yeah.
because I don't have the proper appliances. And so that's the key. That's what happens is your body gets to a point of starving and you're almost having this, it's having its own conversation. I don't want to live here. Like, I don't have enough resources to keep doing what I'm doing. Like, this is like, you're putting me at a disadvantage. And I think peptides and a lot of these other biologics are bringing the advantage back. And that's what we really want to do. And the prevention is huge.
Yeah.
I think peptides are the best, and again, this is my opinion on this because of being in all these different biologics. They're one of the greatest preventative models because it doesn't cost a lot. It doesn't take a lot in order to just keep these signals high in your body. It is, and we're finding that a lot of biologics are coming into play there. But when I looked at it from my side, I look at it as, well, I just kind of give you an example. When I was dealing with a shoulder injury, I couldn't sleep. I mean, it was hurting so bad that you're up all night because you can't get in the right position. I use the peptides in order to reduce that pain. Now, here's the key that I always want to express. It didn't heal my shoulder. It did get rid of the pain and it was starting the healing process. I still needed to go do like an acellular stem cell to because I needed the thousands of signals to create the repair, not one or two. It
Hmm.
is, but then when I continued to use it afterwards, it became a supportive therapy to advancing what I had just done. So the one thing I always want to tell people is that some people, if it's acute, may get every benefit they need out of a peptide. I think a lot of it's going to play on the preventative nature, but it will not be the end all be all because there's a lot of processes going on in your body that need addressing.
Yeah.
It'd be like feeding half your family members. Like a couple
Yeah.
of them just aren't going to make it if that's the case. So you can't just do a couple of peptides and think that the body just knows what to do with it. So, and that's a simplified way of putting it.
No,
It,
I love what I love about that is the honesty
mhm.
around that. And so I do think our next episode should be on exosomes and stem
Oh
cells.
yeah.
I think that
Oh
that
yeah.
would be, phenomenal. But, what I love is, okay, peptides are amazing.
They are.
They are preventative. They can definitely help with autoimmune disease and those
Hmm.
acute processes. But it's a supportive therapy. I love that. They're a
Yes.
supportive therapy, and again, that surgical precision, but you also need to address the body as a whole.
Correct.
And so
Correct.
I love that approach and I appreciate the honesty around that.
Well,
I
thank
think
you.
that that's really huge. Okay, we're starting to run out of time, so I want you to tell us about Peptide University. I
Yeah.
have looked it over, huge fan, and so I want you to
Yes.
talk about that and how people can access it and what's included. And I know there's free and there's paid, and so if you could just tell us
Correct,
about that.
correct. No, as a matter of fact, I mean, when you talk about it, and I think it's the website is actually called the Peptide University. So to make sure you use the in front of it, and it's really a resource guide. What I think about Peptide University is it's a way to educate so that both the practitioner and the patient can have a proper conversation. Because that's the tough part. If you just walk in, it's like, Doc, tell me what I should know. Well, if you don't really know about it, you have a tough time trying to translate what you're dealing with. So I think it's a
Hmm.
great way to kind of start the conversation between you and your practitioner. At the end of the day, the value they bring to it is understanding how they synergistically work together and what those dosages look like. And I think that's important as we're looking at this is making sure that you see a practitioner because that's the thing too. There's so much direct to consumer happening in peptides. That's a dangerous path to walk because if you get it wrong, one, either you're spending money and not getting any result. Two, you do it another way and you actually start having side effects from it. The dosing is so important in this sort of stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I try to tell people, and you said it before, you said, with the good comes the bad. And
Hmm.
so when something gets popular, everybody joins in. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy the FDA because they kind of help keep the balance. They're not going to be perfect at it. So anybody here that's, doing this in a proper fashion is still going to be frustrated with how slow you think the FDA might be going. But at the same time, their forces are out there. And as a matter of fact, I've watched this happen quite a few times. The FDA is pulling in some enforcement for some of the bad players in the peptide space because they're worried about public safety. And so I think that's something that is good in this sense. I mean, like I said, it's a love-hate relationship, right?
Right.
And,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
yeah, and we just
Yeah.
want to see these things being pushed through
Well,
faster.
and it's like, again, there's nothing wrong with the GLP-1s. It's the dosing that's causing the blindness that's coming to
Hmm.
the forefront, the stomach paralysis, the muscle losses. It's truly the dosing.
Hmm.
And I think that does go back on the pharmaceutical company because that's the dose they're recommending to start with is 10. And that to
Correct.
me is financially driven, not patient
Yes.
driven. And if the pharmaceutical was to be honest and say, "Hey, let's start at 1.25 or
Hmm.
2.5 and then go up from there," for one, it's more affordable for the consumer. But two, you're less likely to, and maybe they didn't know. I don't know. I haven't dived into their studies. You never know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe they thought that was the dose to start with, and now they're going,
Oh yeah.
oops. Um,
Yeah. Well, now you're getting a larger population, right? Now
yeah,
it's not about 20,000 patients or 30,000 patients. It's about millions of patients. And so
yeah.
as the numbers go up, the odds go up.
Well,
And
that
it
and
is,
it was designed for diabetics. So
yep,
maybe for a diabetic,
yep,
who has a A1C of 9, maybe
yep,
10 was a good one. I still disagree with that approach. I'm much more of a slow and steady wins the race. And
correct.
but it was a diabetic medication that they found, helps people lose weight, and then boom, it exploded.
Yes.
But I think that that's where the I don't know where the regulation is for
Hmm.
that.
Yeah,
We kind of do have to let the pharmaceuticals kind of lead that because they're the ones developing it.
correct.
Just to kind of recap, the Peptide
The
University
Peptide
is
University,
great
correct.
for the doctors because I do have, practitioners that listen to this podcast as well.
Yes.
And so for them, is it a resource that they can really kind of gather their wits? Like if this is something that they go, okay, I want to get into this, is this a good resource for practitioners?
It is very good. It was built for practitioners, but it was written in a language for consumers
I
so that
love
there could
that.
be an easy understanding. And that's what I really enjoy about it too, because part of it too is, when I was talking about looking at things in threes,
Hmm.
because what it is you're trying to look at the synergistic approach. You're not looking at something as a single, hey, there's a single pathway when there's multiples. So when you do this, and it's all categorized, people go in there and they're like, oh, well, there's 10 peptides here. Now it starts a conversation with a doctor because they're going, hey, I want to work on the inflammation in my body. I want to work on my weight loss. How do I do this? I see that there's all these things. And so it starts a nice conversation. And then it's up to that practitioner to understand where one is more important than the other. It is. And so, again, there's a paid version to it. That's just to go deeper into the curriculum. I think the free version gives people the opportunity to just kind of sit there and explore from a high level, you know, this is the
Overview.
superficial. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
an overview type thing, and you don't have to go in and invest in it. But for those that get deep into the weeds with it, it's a simple subscription model that people can go in there and purchase, and they have access. And so
Yeah.
I think that works.
That's awesome. What an amazing resource. Thank you so much for your time, your
Oh,
expertise, your passion. I just, I'm so grateful to have you as a connection and as a resource for
ditto.
me and for my audience because there's a lot of noise out there. And if we can
Yes,
have an intelligent conversation, a real conversation that's not blowing things out of proportion or
yes,
minimizing, but it's just,
correct.
it's a piece of the health building, the longevity, the quality of life puzzle that we're all trying to figure out
Yes,
here.
yes.
So,
No, I think that's and I really appreciate this too because this is a passion project for me, right? It's a legacy project. The intent is I was suffering, I found a solution, and I had been in medicine and didn't even know that some of these things were an option. So part of this, the desire to jump on this with you is like we get to reach more people and we get to spend time educating and helping them ask the right questions because I think we might have talked about it in the last time is you need to be your own advocate. The
yes.
way medicine is steering today, things are so fast that a lot of time the doctor patient relationship's not like it was one time before where the doctor had time and really sit down and thoroughly go through things. Now it's like, hey, okay, I see this issue. These three things will work. Let's try this one and you're out the door. And so a lot of people just stare and go, okay, well, then I guess that's what I do. Well, now with the access to information like this, we can literally go, okay, that's great, doc. But you know what? I was doing some reading and I understand that there's this peptide or this exosome or this acellular or something of that nature. And then it causes both of them to stop and think for a second and going, well, hey, maybe there is something here because otherwise the direct relationship is to the pharmaceutical side and it doesn't have to be that direction.
Yeah.
Pharmaceuticals are critical. So I don't want to take that away. I don't want anybody
Right.
stopping their medications. And, because I even tell people when you're doing peptide therapy, you're doing any of these other type of therapies, you need to do that in conjunction with your doctor, even if they're not doing it, because they need to keep watching your baselines and making sure that things aren't getting out of whack. And I've
Hmm.
had some scenarios where people got so better that their doctor was able to take them off medications, and not specifically from peptides, but hey, look, if your A1C is getting in better check as you're doing a GLP, you want your doctor watching how much insulin you're on, or otherwise you're going to have a negative reaction. So, there's a lot of different things, and so please make sure that would be the preface that I have here. Preference
Yeah.
is
Well,
that
and
make sure you're doing this with your practitioner.
yeah, and even with autoimmune disease, like I have a friend who has lupus
Hmm.
and it destroyed her kidneys, right? And so when she went into her flare, she was hospitalized for a week and she ended up getting shingles and valley fever. No, not valley fever,
Oh
West
man.
Nile,
Yes.
because she was on too high of immune suppressants. So she had to find a new doctor. And then they tried weaning her off of one of like her kidney medication, and then her kidney function got bad again, right? And
Hmm.
so there's just two medications, but
Yep.
it's looking like she's gonna have to be on low doses of both of those for a long
Yes.
time because as she tries to wean off, her body can't handle it. That's okay. And I think
Yep.
a lot of people feel like failures if they have to be on pharmaceuticals. My thyroid, it doesn't work anymore. I was a boss babe, single mom for way too long, stressed myself out. I'm on NP thyroid. It's a T3, T4 medication. I feel
Yep.
amazing, right?
Yep. Yep.
It's
Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
something I'm going to have to be on for the rest of my life.
Yep.
I'm okay with it because I feel better, right?
That's right.
And it's like, I'm doing everything I can to support the processes. Maybe I'll be able to go on a lower dose eventually. Maybe I won't. Maybe I burnt myself out too much. I'm okay with that
Correct.
because it's a quality of life thing. I don't feel like a failure, but I feel like the holistic community has it kind of made it so if you're on medications, you're a failure. I mean, you're a heart transplant. You
Yes.
have to be on anti-rejection meds.
I do. I
You-
do.
Like, and it's like you're not a failure because of that, right?
No, exactly.
And so it's like, a lot of people think because I'm in the more holistic world that and I am kind of anti-pharma, anti-doctors. I get kind
Yeah.
of, I get I'm a bad patient because I ask a lot of questions, right?
Right. It's again, you're advocating for yourself,
I
right?
am. And, if I'm in a car accident, I was in a jet ski accident where I was bleeding, we didn't know where from. Please take me to the hospital and put me on all the drugs and do all the things. I'll
Correct.
recover from it after. And, there's that balance of we need all of the modalities,
That's
truly.
correct.
We just don't want to depend on pharmaceuticals that are unnecessary, and
Correct.
especially if we're not doing our part in taking care of ourselves. And
Correct.
biologics is the direction that pharmaceuticals are going.
That's
And
correct.
it's not all bad. And I think that I really loved that balance approach of, there's a time and a place, and pharma's realizing that their stuff is hurting more than it's helping a lot of the time. So we have to find other ways to help people and to continue making money in that.
Yeah, because that funds research, right? So, I mean, this
It
is
does. It does.
yeah.
People don't realize that a lot of it is research. Now, if we took the commercials down and truly the
Hmm.
doctors led the
Yeah.
way, I think that that would solve a lot of issues. That's a whole other
Yes.
can of worms there. But the research side of it is absolutely essential. I think people forget that.
Correct. Correct.
I actually have my uncle's in town, and he's been an obstetrician gynecologist for 40 years. He's having his 40th reunion next month for medical school. And you know, he he's always been a huge fan of helping the patient,
Oh, absolutely.
and he does it every way possible. He wants all the
Yeah.
options, and doctors don't go in it. I mean, the money's there, but they go in it because they want to
Oh,
help
yeah. It's the
people.
compassion first.
And
That's the
yeah, and I have a cousin
oh,
who was in pharmaceutical development for a long time, and she's totally on the holistic bandwagon now. I actually haven't had a conversation with her about pharmaceuticals for a while, but like her passion was to help people.
correct.
Like nobody's in there saying, I want to murder
Correct,
people.
correct, correct,
That's
correct.
not the
No,
approach.
that's exactly right. And we
You
want
know?
everybody to generate income because that's how innovation is created. That's what keeps,
Yep.
because if not, nobody's around to tell you what the new thing is. It is so, it's
Yeah.
like we want to make sure that everybody is being funded properly because that starts the new research, that starts the new innovation. I mean, honestly, 50 years ago, I would be dead because the heart
Hmm.
transplant thing had not been perfected. But because there was money that was infused into a system, it actually helped do the research that saved my life. So it is, and so that's why I say I'm grateful. I mean, even the medications that I take today, without them, I'd be gone. So it's one of those
Yeah.
things that it's a good thing. But like I said, it's sometimes with too much power, that's where things go awry.
Yeah. And I think right now we're trying to find that
Yes,
balance.
we are.
They've pushed it so far that there's this huge rebellion happening.
Correct.
And I don't see that as a bad thing. The pendulum swings, and hopefully we kind of find some happy medium in there. I mean, that's really the goal. And I do think patient advocacy and education is absolutely essential. We cannot outsource our care to anybody.
Correct.
We can just partner. And I think that we are on our way to that being the model again, because that's how it used
Absolutely.
to
That's
be. I
correct.
think we're back. We've gone too far, so the pendulum is swinging back, and we don't want to go back to the Stone Ages by any means. And I don't think we ever will, but I do think that the pendulum is biologics and patient partnership.
It is. It is. And that's a good thing. And like you say, after COVID, we saw a great response there because that actually triggered a lot of activity in the biologic space. I'm glad the lessons we learned from it. It was a painful experience, but I really think that was the swinging moment that started to shift people towards a more holistic approach, and again, that's my opinion. So it's not, but I will say this, my passion project came alive, because of the change in the mindset of both the practitioner and the patient during that time frame. And so, it's out of adversity comes opportunity. And so it is, in this sense, I think we have an opportunity to serve patients in a different way. And I'm just
Yeah.
honored to be able to be in a space that's been given that space in order to work with practitioners to do this.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Thank you,
again,
Marian.
Mark.
I
I
really
I
appreciate.
appreciated our time
Oh, me
together,
too. We
and
always
it's
have
so good to
you
see you
too. You too. It's
again.
such great conversation. So thank you. I do appreciate it. And I appreciate all your listeners too.
Yeah, and we'll get you back on here, and we'll talk exosomes and acellular
Wonderful.
stem cells, and we'll
Oh,
take
I
people
can't
even
wait. I
deeper.
can't wait. Marian, thank you so much.
Thank you. Mark is truly such a wealth of knowledge, and I'm excited to have him as a resource for you, as well as for me. I'm learning right along with you. As Mark and I were talking, we talked about how peptides, as wonderful as they are, can only do so much. And truly, that is with any biologic, medication, healing modality, or practitioner. The majority of the power resides within you and your daily choices. Where I can fit into this health puzzle is nutrition and meals. I do my very best to make eating for lifelong health as simple of a change as possible for you. I want to remove all the noise out there surrounding food and show you exactly what it looks like to eat for nourishment, mind, body, and soul. I do this for you through my therapeutic food framework. And there I do all the heavy lifting for you in creating meal plans with few ingredients, simple recipes, yet tons of flavor, sharing all of my tips and tricks and shortcuts so you aren't spending hours in the kitchen, plus how to talk to friends and family, enjoy holiday dinners, travel, and more. And when needed, follow a therapeutic diet prescribed by your practitioner. I have meal plans around mold toxicity, histamine intolerance, hormone balancing, leaky gut, and more. All of my resources for you are in one place. You'll have lifetime access to it. You also get coaching sessions with me to help you individualize the program and have that emotional support you need during this season of life. It's lonely and hard, but it doesn't have to be, and I don't want it to be for you. No need to be an expert in the kitchen. You can be new to cooking or an expert cook. You will be able to make meals and desserts you and your loved ones will enjoy eating that also support your health versus tearing it down. And all those roadblocks that have hindered your journey in the past, you have a coach who can help you overcome them with different strategies and support so they no longer trip you up. You deserve to feel your absolute best, and I would love to help you navigate how to eat real food and enjoy it for life. Head down to the show notes to learn how to connect with Mark and more about the therapeutic food framework. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you found this episode helpful, would you do me a favor and help others find it by leaving a review, sharing a screenshot on social media, or sharing the link with a friend? By you sharing what you've learned, others are able to find this podcast and join our community. Be sure to check out my website, www.roadtolivingwhole.com, for over 160 delicious recipes, a variety of meal plans, and a blog packed full of even more healthy living tips. If you'd like to learn more about how to work with me as your coach, you can schedule a free consult through www.roadtolivingwhole.com/health-coaching/. Until next time, friend. Bye.